All right, coming up here on the show, yes, it was the shot heard around, well, no one was watching, but I suppose the shot heard around NASCAR with Ty Gibbs versus Denny Hamlin. We'll dig into that, but size up everything from New Hampshire Motor Speedway, heard right on Performance Racing Network. We'll also talk a little silly season, including a big crew chief on the move, and the effect of adding a third team to an organization. We're going to play with that thought while we preview Kansas, as we're already passing the halfway point here in these Cup Series playoffs with 5 to go. Indeed we are, and welcome to the show. Awkward pause. Episode 332 is on track with you right now. I'm your co-host, Doug Fireball Turnbull from the traffic team at 11 Alive News in Atlanta with Rachel Cox-Rosen, and also part of the pit road reporting team and announcing team at Performance Racing Network, who had the call for the PRN race in New Hampshire for the Cup race and the truck race as well, and AJC Gridlock Guy. Welcome to the 5 to Go podcast. See, I do my resume first in the name of the show. Isn't that nice? It's good to be on with you all midweek here as we come back from the Northeast and then head for the Midwest, or as Brick in Anchorman said, Devin, the Middle East. That's what he called it. That's not accurate, but that's what he said. But welcome to the show. And yes, I referenced Devin. Let me just go ahead and get our panel on board since you're looking at him if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple, and GoPRN.com. First, he's our roving racing journo. He crunches the numbers. Hire Devin Kupka. Respond right here. Get my boy a job, man. He's fresh off another Jets loss, so consistency continues there. He watched him in Tampa. Dev, you recovering okay? And how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm still recovering from that Tampa trip, and I've got some more trips coming up starting next week, so I'm taking this as like the bye week before the traveling begins again. So I'm still, you probably can hear it, I'm still recovering from that Tampa trip, even though it wasn't like brutal or anything, but it's just been nonstop since like last Friday.
Well, I mean, something there was brutal, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, the loss was brutal, and gosh, I knew as soon as we blocked that field goal, the defense was going to give it right back up. The defense was going to give it right back.
That's tough.
The game was
That's
over
tough.
when Tyrod Taylor threw that pick six right before the half. That's just my opinion, but that's what I thought.
Wait, so is Tyrod Taylor your QB1? What? Did I miss something?
Well,
no, wait.
Well, Justin Fields is in concussion protocol, and Tyrod's our backup, so he started on Sunday.
Okay, that's right. Justin Fields, yes. Okay. Man, that's tough. That's tough. New York can't catch a break with injuries for sure, man. Well, sorry to hear that.
That's my
but
3-game winning streak seeing them in person.
Oh, okay. Well, that's big.
So now I'm like
that's
5-4 all time, I think now. Seeing the
Hey,
Jets
for those
in person.
For those keeping stats of Devin seeing the New York Jets in person, he is 5-4. Update your Excel spreadsheets. 5-4. Better record than I had seeing the Braves in person this year, who had a tough season, but they just had a 10-game winning streak snap right before the show recording started here today. They were coming back in the ninth and had a close call at first base there. So, yeah.
And one thing, too, about Tampa, how hot it was down there. I was 3 rows up from the Jets bench on Sunday, and the real field temperature on the lower bowl was over 100 degrees. I literally boiled on Sunday. So
literally
that was
boiled.
fun.
So you literally reached what was boiling point, 120 degrees or 180 degrees?
Oh, I was
210?
close to that. So
that was 212.
212, that's it. Okay. Well,
it's just
on that note,
sweat everywhere.
Man, Pixar didn't happen.
I could probably find one.
I'm playing with you, man. No, I'm glad you had a good time. Sorry they had a loss, and we're glad that you're back. All right. Also joining us on the line, it's the longest intro ever. He is our 2018 Georgia Racing Hall of Fame inductee, championship mechanic, master maker of speed, grinded the gears in Dawsonville in a good way, by the way. Dan Elliott, how you doing, brother?
Doing good. We're winding down on this, not as brutal as in years past, I don't believe, but winding down on this summer and trying to get into some a little more fall-like temperatures, which I'm loving because doing the outside activities that you like to do, other than Devin, we like to try to stay a little bit cooler.
Yeah, no doubt. Rain on the way here to Georgia, by the way, for sure. And also, hope y'all didn't lose me there. All my screens just refreshed. That was weird. Hope y'all didn't lose me. But rain on the way here in Georgia, and yeah, that unseasonably hot weather affecting the NFL too, and affecting the racing as well, although I think it was a little bit crisp in New Hampshire from what I heard some people say. So let's dig into the New Hampshire race. It was Ryan Blaney Now suddenly, remember when he was behind his Penske teammates in wins this year? He was the last one of the three to get on the board. Well, now he has 3 victories, Blaney does. And he dominated this race. Although he led the second most laps, he seemed to be the car that, as I listened to the postscripts from different drivers, from Denny Hamlin and from others, he seemed to be the car to beat for sure. Joey Logano, though, won the pole and led just a ton of laps there, 147, and looked the best that Logano's looked in a long time. Now, Blaney with the win, of course, advances to the next round. That doesn't mean he takes the next 2 weeks off, but the pressure's off a little bit for team number 12. And, hey, they'd like to get another win, get some more playoff points, and have that to carry potentially between the round of 8 and the round of 4 if they need it, although he is very good at Martinsville. That ends the round of 8. So the top 10 finishers, I'm going to buzz through those that get you guys' takes, your biggest takeaways from that New Hampshire race. We have Ryan Blaney as your winner, 116 laps led. Now, the runner-up finisher only led 10 laps, but put on quite a fight and made a giant comeback to do it. And that is the guy that had finished basically in last place all of round 1 of the playoffs and was well out of the thing, and that was Josh Berry. Josh Berry finished second, and at one point was leading toward the end there when Blaney passed him, and then was catching Blaney again, but Blaney was able to hold him off and eventually pulled away. William Byron, the ghost, William Byron, who is not, it seems like he and the Hendrick cars have all been, in a way, persona non grata in these playoffs so far, but he's done enough, and he finished third. Then it was Logano fading to fourth. You got to think they're kicking themselves after having the fastest car. I mean, even faster than when they won in Texas. All right, back in May. I was at that race. 5th place finisher, who? Chase Elliott. Yeah, that guy, Chase Elliott. He didn't accumulate a lot of points in this race, only 36, but he got a top 5. Christopher Bell, who's one of the favorites coming in, and one of the tire testers, like I believe Ryan Blaney was there at New Hampshire back a couple of months ago. He finished 6th. Kyle Larson, he finished 7th. 8th place finisher was Michael McDowell, the only non-playoff driver in the top 10. And then 9th went to Ross Chastain in the membrane. And Chase Briscoe had a very pedestrian 10th place finish, considering he led off the playoffs with a win and a 2nd place. Other playoff drivers, Denny Hamlin was 12th. I got to scroll down. The contrast not very good here. Austin Cindric only 17th at the end of this thing. Austin Cindric only 17th. Tyler Reddick 21st. Bubba Wallace 26th. Did I leave anybody out? I think that's all of them there. So, guys, let's dive into it here. What did we think of the race? Devin, you first. I know you've had to catch up on the highlights, which you said the highlight reel is pretty good, but what did you think of the headlines of New Hampshire and the results?
I think, I've said this a couple of times over the years I've been on this podcast, but how about Team Penske just getting hot at the right time again? I feel like I'm a broken record at this point, but
all of the
that.
industry
what
is
I saw
right
from
now.
The highlights
Yes.
is Cindric was running well, Blaney was running well, Logano was winning well, Logano won the pole. They had a really good showing there at New Hampshire, and this is the time of the year you want to be executing at your best, and I think that's what we saw from the Team Penske drivers, Blaney winning the race, and it's just a really, really good effort there by Team Penske in this Gen 7 era to start really putting their best effort forward, and I think they really just showed out the field on why they've won the last 3 NASCAR Cup Series championships. I think they just, when it comes to this time of year, they're able to just put it on, and I feel like that's what we saw on Sunday at New Hampshire.
And similar tire to Phoenix, if not the same aero components, if you will, for all of the Cup Series cars for Phoenix. And they didn't run as well at Gateway as they did at Phoenix. Now I heard Tommy Baldwin, who is the co-host of Door Bumper Clear with Freddie Kraft and excuse me, with Freddie Kraft, and Tommy Baldwin said when that was brought up to him, he said, well, Penske didn't show up at Gateway, but I think they were just holding something back. Roger Penske's a good businessman and knows how to hold that back a little bit, which is something, Dan, you used to say, we're saying through the summer months about the Hendrick cars, who also stumbled a little bit out of the block into these playoffs. So Devin's biggest takeaway was Penske domination and how it sets up the rest of the playoffs. Dan, what was your biggest takeaway from Sunday's goings?
I don't know if that sets up the rest of the playoffs. It definitely is a morale booster. Don't ever discount that fact.
Yeah.
But you got too many races left, and there are too many teams that are still extremely good, and don't count out any of these teams just yet. But I feel like right now that was a very calculated race at New Hampshire, and I feel like that the drivers that weren't as strong as the Penske cars ran a very calculated race in the respect that they weren't conservative, but they were very careful in what they did during this event, staying out of trouble and trying to get the best finish they could possibly get. I'm not even going to say salvage, because they were very good, and they did make the cars. They were able to better the cars as the race went on, learned as the race progressed, and put it all together for the final laps. And when you look at Larson and Elliott and Byron and some other drivers that did, you can see how that race played out. And no, they weren't, as we talked about earlier, they weren't the fastest off the trailer when they got there, but they definitely made up ground in what could have happened during this event. So I figured all in all that this race was a success for two of the teams at least. Blaney's car was one that he could only beat himself. I think that if anybody was to beat him, he would have had to made a mistake that took him out. Now, his car on long runs was where it really, if they'd had a caution with just a few laps left to go, I think you'd have seen a different outcome. I really do.
Interesting, yeah.
Yep. I think that his car was extremely good on long runs. I'm not discounting the fact that that car was extremely fast and would have been hard to beat, but I would say in shorter runs, I think some of the other drivers would have been a lot more aggressive on a shorter run, knowing that they didn't have to save tires for the last laps of this event.
Something to watch through the playoffs, to your point there, is Ryan Blaney's pit crew. Now, Bristol was a weird race where I don't think the pressure was on to click off, 9.1 second pit stops, just because the variance was so big on the racetrack. You could make it up and the cars were so spread out. But they lost some spots, the 12 team did, in the pits. And they made a pit crew change earlier this year, by the way, to address some of that, do some swaps with Zane Smith's pit crew. But the number 12 pit crew lost some spots in this race on pit road, and Ryan Blaney just had such a good car. Jonathan Hassler and the engineers' setup was just so good he could overcome it. At Bristol, he overcame it because it was that weird race. So watch for that on pit stops. And in the beginning of the race, to your point about the short runs, Dan, he went from the front row until about fourth or fifth and then clawed his way back up and eventually won stage number one. Now, here's what Blaney's been doing lately. It's easy to get enraptured in the moment by what the result is. Christopher Bell, the championship favorite, leaving Bristol. Ryan Blaney, and last week we talked about how hard it is to really show a championship favorite. But I want to go all the way back. This was race number 30 at Loudon. 11 races ago, basically. Race number 20 at Sonoma, Ryan Blaney finished 36th. Since then, he's finished 8th at Dover, and then 7th, 4th, 6th, 3rd, 1st. And that was Daytona. Then he finished 18th in Darlington, and then has gone 4th, 4th, 1st. That's a variance of racetracks. Granted, there hasn't been a mile and a half of that whole stretch, and we're finally going to one in Kansas. Can you believe we haven't raced a mile and a half all the way since, I think it was Texas? Let me scroll up. We haven't raced a mile and a half, not including Echo Park Speedway, since Charlotte, since the Coke 600, race 13.
Indy?
No, that's a 2.5 mile track. It's a downforce track, but it's not that cookie cutter mile and a half. Indy's kind of its own thing because of the heavy braking and the flat turns. So that what Blaney does here doesn't matter though in Kansas. Last mile and a half of the season, except unless you're thinking about playoff points if you were to win the race or win a stage. So that's Ryan Blaney. Dan's big takeaway there, is basically how much the other teams were calculated, or maybe you said even when we talked before the show, conservative. They're just trying to walk out of here with a good points day. And Blaney's team, Jonathan Hassler, was like, hey, we're trying to win this race. Like, to hell with that. We're going for it.
Yeah, but I think in Blaney's, on the pit crew deal on that, I think that they lost some spots. They wanted to make sure, as I would be on any of those pit crews, that the car was that good that I did my job correctly and nothing was loose or fell off. And even though I might have lost a couple of spots on pit road, we're going to make doggone sure that everything is 100% before that car leaves pit road. No speeding penalties, no mistakes on pit road, and no mistakes on the track by Blaney, and
Yep.
you're in victory lane.
And he's one of
And
the,
much to
despite all the
Devin's,
DNFs,
much to
despite all the
what
DNFs,
Devin
one of the
said,
smoothest drivers out there.
yeah, much to what Devin said about Penske saving the best to the end. We're not at the end yet, but definitely from what we saw this past weekend, they definitely had saved a lot for these last races for sure, because that was one of them.
If I'm 2311 or Trackhouse right now, or Austin Cindric, who just normally is on the bottom end of performance on the Penske chain, not that it's terrible performance, he just normally is outperformed by his teammates. You saw a soft spot with Hendrick. Like, oh man, there's three cars up for grabs here. Like any of them could fall. They've had these weird finishes, and maybe that's my way forward is to jump in front of one of them. Not the Gibbs Toyotas, maybe not one or two of those Penske cars, but the Hendrick ones look soft, and they showed up in New Hampshire. And granted, that's just 1 week, but let's remember who won Kansas back in the spring. Kyle Larson. All right. And I think handily, too. That race wasn't quite as scintillating as other Kansas races have been. Ross Chastain, though, won that Kansas race last fall when he was not in the playoffs.
And
so,
Doug,
I think be what they're hanging their hat on.
I think that you're going to have to. I think the importance here is going to be on winning your way through these events to get to the next round. I think that's going to be what most drivers look at, is that we may have to rely on points, but we want to win our way to all of these races to where that we're locked in for the championship.
Absolutely. And imagine if you're in a must-win situation at Roval, going against SVG, AJ Allmendinger. I don't know if they're entering Zilisch or not. I can't remember. I don't think they are. Not to mention the great road course racers who likely are in the top of the point standings, like Christopher Bell, who's done a walk-off win in the Roval. Even Ryan Blaney, 2018 Roval winner, although Penske road course stuff hasn't been as good lately. Just imagine you're going against that. Even Chase Elliott. If I'm Tyler Reddick, who's good at road courses, and I'm like, I'm down 30 points to the cut going into the Roval, and I got to beat SVG, yeah. But the Roval's crazy, and he almost fell out of that race a year ago and drove back into contention, almost crashed out of it and drove into contention. And Joey Logano and Alex Bowman had a dogfight there, and we know how that ended with the weight stuff afterwards. All right, so now the playoffs, look, just looking at the points, they were only like 12 points apart from second to 12th or something ridiculous like that, or from third to 12th. Now it's a lot different, and I don't want to. No, I'm not even going to ask the question. No one is winner in. Okay, you have a couple of good stages, a really good race. Suddenly you race a deficit. But Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, and we're going to talk about their team in a moment, are 27 and 23 points to the red on the cut line. Austin Cindric minus 19, Ross Chastain minus 12, and then above it, fairly comfortably, although again, one race could chop you right out. Chase Briscoe plus 12, Chase Elliott 7th plus 14, Logano plus 24, Hamlin 5th place plus 27, Bell 4th place plus 29, and then it goes Larson plus 41, William Byron plus 47. So anything can happen here, and that's why you have to actually run these races. You can spin out a lap one at Kansas, and, I mean, look what Josh Berry's situation entering the playoffs, right? So we'll see what happens there, as we like to say. We'll see what happens, and it'll be interesting to see. We guess that is sports analysis 101. If you say it'll be interesting to see what happens,
that's called the Devin Kupka special right there, because that's just burned into my vocabulary. If you ever heard me,
we got to work out our creases. Okay, that's one I hear others say it a lot too, and I'm like, come on, yeah, of course it better be interesting if I'm wasting my time watching it. Okay, all right, you're taking my time watching it. All right, let's talk about the big moment, the big conflict of the race. Did have something to do with the playoffs. Denny Hamlin, this guy, I mean, brings lightning with him to strike him, it seems like. And granted, he was being done wrong on the racetrack. He was getting not just raced hard, but raced hard by a teammate and over again and run up the track and the whole deal. And so he finally said, hey, and he decided to give him a tap, which spun him out. And that teammate, of course, being Ty Gibbs, the third-year driver, the grandson of the team owner, Joe Gibbs. Not only does Gibbs spin out, but he crashes out of the race. Or crashes, does he DNF? I think he did. I think he DNF'd eventually. But he spun right in front of Christopher Bell, who was in the middle of that brouhaha, trying to pass his teammate. Hamlin was apoplectic on the radio. Has anybody talked to the guy? Someone should talk to him. Doesn't he know we're in an effing championship? I didn't hear Christopher Bell's radio, but I flipped over to Ty Gibbs's radio, Dan Elliott, just in time to hear him say game on, which I haven't had a tweet or an X post get that many interactions in a while, just because X is kind of a wasteland these days. But game on, is that your response after racing and then getting wrecked by your championship teammate? Okay, so Denny Hamlin addressed this on Actions Detrimental and basically said, hey, leadership needs to step in. Coach Gibbs had said after the race, the drivers need to hash this out, which I think is the right thing to say in the moment. Just say something, let the media back off. But it seems to me, Dan, there was a lot more give that could have been given on both ends. So how did you size up the youngster versus the veteran, the two teammates, one in the playoffs, one not, and what you would do to coach either of them?
That's one of the struggles that I saw a lot at Gresham between some of the players there, and I still say that is crew chief can see that coming a mile away. The driver behind you don't have to stay on the radio and keep saying something. The crew chief sees that a mile away, and I think that's something that the crew chief is your commander in chief, your coach, or whatever. And I think that should have been one of the deals where he was told to let's give and take. This isn't the time to do battle. It wasn't even at the end of the race, and it wasn't even a race where those two were running for the lead. It wasn't one of those circumstances, and it could have been a whole lot worse, is all I'm saying. And I'd hate to go into Talladega or someplace like that and have something like that happen again, because this is what gets other players in trouble in these events, and what takes you out. You're an innocent bystander and get taken out in these problems.
It was lap 111. It was in the middle or somewhere midst of stage 2.
Yeah.
Now, they were racing just outside the top 10, which is kind of, racing that hard for a non-top 10 position. Great for the fans to watch, but it's not strategic in either case, right? Cool your stuff down, see if you could get them. And I think Denny Hamlin was like, look, I'm going to, this is one way I heard it explained. I'm going to gas up through the turn here, show you I can pass you. Come on, certainly you're going to lift, right? And when he didn't lift, I think he just got so hot under the collar. But here's the deal. He spun his teammate in front of their other championship contending teammate, and Christopher Bell could have ended up with the worst out of all three of that. So I know you were at the football game there, but Dev, you went back, you've watched some highlights, I'm sure heard some analysis, watched some interviews. How do you size up the whole thing?
I think Hamlin spitting out Gibbs was wrong. Now, I think both Gibbs and Hamlin both have valid points. Gibbs still has a lot to prove in the NASCAR Cup Series, where really, we look at his career, you could really say he's really underperformed in that equipment that he's in. And the highlight of his whole career so far is winning the in-season tournament challenge at Indianapolis this year.
Oh, yeah, that. Anybody remember that? Have I heard that? I want to say, can I just interrupt, Devin? I'm sorry. Has anybody brought that up one freaking time since this has come up? That is everybody respond right here. This is the first time. There's some of that money. Come on. Show them that cheddar.
Here.
Show them that regular season cheddar, son. Okay. This is the first time on any podcast I've listened to, any social media posts that I've heard any NASCAR analyst bring up that Ty Gibbs was the regular or the in-season tournament champ. All right? And I'm not making fun of you, Devin. I'm saying that's how much all of this crap overshadows the few good things you do, especially when you're not winning. But continue. I'm sorry, in-season champ.
But yeah, that's the highlight of his career so far, and he's still chasing that first win. We're 3.5 seasons into his Cup Series career, because if you remember, he took over for Kurt Busch when he got hurt at Pocono a couple of years ago.
Yes, Kurt Busch. I'm sorry. Yes.
So, he's 3.5, no wins yet to show for it, and his average finish is actually worse than it was last year. It's 17.9 this year. And I think with Gibbs, and I said Hamlin and Gibbs both have points. From Hamlin's perspective, we look at it this way. Well, okay, maybe, Hamlin or Gibbs needs to give him the courtesy there. That does make sense in a lot of instances. But I don't side with anybody in this issue because I don't think Hamlin should have spun it. But there's still that courtesy that Gibbs should give Hamlin. But at the same time, Gibbs still has a lot to prove out there on the track, so I don't blame him for racing him hard. So that's kind of my viewpoint on the whole situation.
Ryan Newman both got praised and cursed for racing the crap out of people. But here's the thing. It was Ryan Newman. He was a veteran driver. He had wins. He had a bank account, so to speak, to lean on. That doesn't make it so much better, but there's something where he established himself. Ty Gibbs, this is all Kyle Petty here. I heard him say this. I just listened to it today. It was from Monday's Fast Talk, Performance Racing Network, GoPRN.com. Check out the podcast. Listen to their discussion about halfway through the show about this. It is the best discussion I've heard on this from all of the main shows that people talk about. Kyle Petty said that Ty Gibbs or anybody that goes in the Xfinity Series in a really good car or ARCA or trucks and beats up on everyone hasn't yet learned how to race. They have learned how to win and drive a fast car, but they haven't learned how to race. And immediately when you go to the Cup Series, unless you're exceptional, Connor Zilisch, we're talking to you. We'll talk about you later in the show, bud. You're probably going to run 17th and be in that squirrel fight the entire race. Lucky to crack the top 10. All right? Now, if you haven't learned how to race, you start making more mistakes. And Ty Gibbs didn't learn the give and take, and we saw it in the Xfinity Series. Because what did he do to his own teammate, Brandon Jones, going for the win at Martinsville in 2022? He already was locked in, Gibbs was, into the Phoenix race. He cleaned Jones out for the lead. If Jones had won that race, both Gibbs cars would have gone to Phoenix to race for a championship. And instead, he cleaned out his teammate because he wanted another trophy. And I love racing hard for the win, but man, that was tough. He has shown in the past when he's been the big dog or when he's the littler dog right now, and I'm not talking about their actual size. I mean, where they're at on the totem pole, that he doesn't quite have that sense of team. Denny Hamlin mentioned, are they afraid to talk to him? Now, I monitored, and I talked about it all last week's show, episode 331. Go check it out. We talked all about Bristol running one of the best races of his career. All right, we just got done praising the guy. So I think he's got it. But they coached him on his radio. But I never heard his crew chief, Tyler Allen, who I really got to talk to before the race. I never heard him talk to him like he's older than him and kind of give him the, hey, man, listen. They kept like, hey, man, hey, remember, we need this trip. Tony Hirschman, spotter, we need this lap time. Remember, save your stuff, okay? Save your stuff. On the other side of me, Mike Kelly and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. have been working together since the Xfinity Series days, winning championships. Mike Kelly, when Stenhouse was pushing back on this strategy, that strategy, what? Mike Kelly's like, man, dude, just shut up and drive. We've got the strategy. You drive, because they could do that. And it at least allows the question, when you see what happened Sunday, does Ty Gibbs being a part owner of that team and being Joe Gibbs' grandson affect how people talk to him? I mean, Bill, I was trying to say Bill, like not you, Dan. I was trying to say in your experience with Bill and raising Chase and all that stuff. And I don't know if you were close to it enough to see, Dan. Did you ever see that in the garage going up where you had Kyle Petty driving for the Petty Enterprises, Chase driving for your brother driving for your dad? I mean, did you see where people had trouble talking to the spawn of the people owning the car? And I'm not saying that unlovingly. I'm just, I think it's a real thing, right?
With all respect across the board for everyone, I saw it, and it came down to you usually had to let the driver make that mistake a time or two, and we've seen that happen with Ty Gibbs. He's made that mistake a time or two, and now it's time a coach teaches the ball players how to play ball. The crew chief needs to help the driver learn how to race. And this to me is, yes, I agree with Devin. Shouldn't come down to a spin out, but it came to that, and it's going to come to more if somebody don't step in and sort of get this situation resolved, because obviously the drivers aren't going to do it.
Right. And Denny Hamlin said leadership needs to step in. The talk that he's gotten in the past, as recently as last year, is race your teammates hard, don't crash them, and remember where you're at in the championship. And we're trying to win a championship here. So I want drivers to conflict each other, but I even think if this were non-teammates, I think if this were, I don't know, Chris Buescher running Denny Hamlin up the track or whatever, Denny Hamlin finally say, look, man, come on, dude. Come on, man. Like, what are you doing? And would Carson, actually, Chris Buescher wouldn't probably do that. If it was Carson Hocevar, he would have gotten wrecked earlier, okay? I think Denny put up with it for a long time. So not taking sides. You can't spin someone out and have your teammate to your outside and almost wreck all three of you. Kyle Petty also said this in the PRN discussion, then we'll move on. If you are trying not to wreck somebody at New Hampshire, you do not hit them on corner entry. You give them a tap on corner exit to get them loose. So there's that. That was a mistake. And will this be the kind of distraction that seems to pop up a lot of years that gets in the way of the number 11 team chasing that elusive first championship for Hamlin? Now, on to another Hamlin-related thing. No, we're not talking about the lawsuit, but this was something that I heard him talking about on Fast Talk, and I want to get more in depth of it here. Again, Kyle Petty was on fire on this show, but I think it's worth saying. So all the credit to him for putting it in my mind. But 2311 and RFK, Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, added third teams this year. And in RFK's case, they all seem to perform similarly. Keselowski had a terrible start to the year, but they all were in roughly playoff contention. There was Ryan Preece well overperformed his previous results, so that kind of masked any problems there, I guess, some problems, but none of them made the playoffs. And Chris Buescher's been the bell cow in that operation. He didn't make it the second year in a row. Now, 2311 adds Riley Herbst as a full-time third driver who struggled terribly, which is not a total surprise in his rookie year. But the performance overall for 2311 has been down, especially on Tyler Reddick's side. Bubba Wallace has had the best season of his career, but overall 2311 has won one time this season, and now they're both well below the cut line. So, Devin, do you think, Kyle Petty said, Petty Enterprises, we even struggled as two teams, but when we added that third team, which he meant the Buckshot Jones, number 44, Georgia Pacific team in 2001, they absolutely struggled, missed races all the time. I've heard a lot of team owners, Devin, say that the three-team number, including Denny Hamlin, say that 3 teams is the perfect number. You don't want to have more, you don't want to have less. That's a perfect number for scale. So do you agree with the notion that Kyle Petty said that adding a third team could potentially have put 2311 and RFK behind?
I think it depends on a lot of factors. I feel like if you're not performing at the fullest extent, I think it could be an issue. I mean, we see Legacy Motor Club's going to be expanding next year. Do I think that's a team that should?
Year after next. They're not
year after next.
Yeah, they got the charter from RFK, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
But just looking at that, let's just say that situation, is that really the best for that team? Let's just say they put out a similar result next year and then going into 2027. I mean, for the longest time we said, or at least I said, Stewart-Haas Racing should get rid of a charter. They just weren't performing as a 4-car team, so what is it? But I think it depends on the situation. If your team's performing really well, then yeah, it's a good move. Maybe in RFK's sense, it's an all right move. It's not a bad move or a great move. But we see a team like 2311 who's been wanting to expand. They do put the results out. That could be a really good move for them. But I feel like out of both of these results, both of the expansions of both RFK and 2311, I feel like we really haven't seen the fullest effect of either of those yet. I mean, Keselowski still took that major hit when he went to RFK Racing. Now, RFK has gotten a lot better since as they've gone on. But yeah. Just really looking back at a lot of it, I think you got to be careful with expansion. I really think you do.
Yeah. It seems like 3 is the number just in terms of revenue and things like that and clout, and 3 is the limit now. And one team I forgot to mention that actually expanded the 3 teams this year was Trackhouse Racing. Now, last year they had that alliance with Spire where the 71 that Zane Smith was driving was sort of a Trackhouse car, but also a Spire car. So it was a little bit convoluted. But they, as having 3 house cars this year, they also expanded. And guess what? 1 win. One win. Suarez, huge struggles. Van Gisbergen, 5 wins because Van Gisbergen toured the road courses. So it's hard to gauge on that. So this is just a theory, Dan. I'm not saying it's fact. And before we get to you, Dan, sorry, Devin, go ahead.
I just want to summarize real quick. I would rather, if I was a team owner, I would rather be good with two cars rather than be mediocre or bad with 3 cars. That's my opinion.
No doubt. Despite the money you'd be getting as a chartered car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I would take performance. I'm about performance, not, when it comes to that aspect, at least.
That's what they all say. But I'm pretty sure, Dan.
But I would be the same person that would sign somebody like Tony Breidinger to my Cup team. But that's just my opinion. Money.
You would sign to okay, all right. You would sign Tony Breidinger to a Cup contract.
Money she's going to bring in.
You just said you didn't care about the money. You wanted performance. What?
Well, I just kind of contradicted myself there.
You 100% got. Tony Breidinger can't run 25th in a truck. What are you talking about? I would love to see a woman make it in the Cup Series.
If we're just talking strictly charters, performance, but if I had the choice of drivers, it's a different thing. But
Devin, you're sounding like Ray Evernham hiring people that he wants. Never mind, actually. Okay, so, hey, 5 to Go podcast, unfiltered. Devin, you even get that joke, Aaron Crocker? Anyway, okay, all right. Dan, Bill Elliott's team struggled when it was 2 teams, and I know that was, and I'm not sure how deeply you were involved even in that, but that's just what I thought of in the 90s where they found the money, got the second car in the Dan Marino co-ownership, and it didn't go well with Jerry Nadeau and the others that drove that 13 car. But what do you think about the notion of 3 teams has maybe caused these newer Cup teams to struggle?
I think you've got to ask yourself the question of why are we looking at 3 teams? And I think it comes down to show me the money, because these charters are going to be worth a ton of money, I feel, as we progress further down the road. And if I could put together an organization and do 3 cars and that's the limit, then that's what I would want to do, because I feel like that if I can procure the sponsorship, put the organization in play, that what I'm going to learn from this, because you and I all know that AI is a culmination of input in. It's the amount of data that we can put in to get an output. Okay.
Yeah.
And the more data that we can put in, the better our output, the more accurate it's going to be. Now, I'm not saying that the organization is ready for that, because first of all, in play, I feel like your structure has to be put together to the extent that it can handle another organization being projected into your organization. So adding another one is, what's this going to do for me? Is it going to, I've seen people come into an organization and absolutely tear it apart. I've seen people come into an organization, restructure it and put it together. I've seen both. It's kind of like the Hendrick deal. That deal has worked pretty well. The Penske deal has worked pretty well. And I feel like that if this is done in the correct manner, that it will produce fruit. I think it will be a plus when it's all said and done. But it still doesn't ask the question, and we don't know, what are we looking at with this third organization, this third team in our organization? What are we looking at? And was the money, did somebody bring the money in with this to be able to make this work for us? Or do we feel like this is going to better the whole organization by having 3 complete teams in this and getting all the feedback, input, data, and so forth? We don't know all the answers to that just yet, but we know that in some organizations so far it's worked, some it hasn't worked so well. But if I could put together, I'd rather do it, because I feel like that the numbers, I want to put some numbers together where I've got some strength on the racetrack of teammates being able to help each other out, unlike what we've seen in the 2311 Gibbs, where that's supposed to be a kind of a nucleus there, even though the teams aren't the same. It's an organization that needs to work together, because this strength in it is obviously Toyota. So I feel like that this would be a plus, but everything else has to be taken into consideration as well.
Well, for sure. And I don't think there's a clear-cut way to look at that, but maybe a
No.
warning sign. Legacy, as Devin alluded to a moment ago, Legacy Motor Club, the 42, 43 cars there, that team co-owned by Jimmy Johnson, they settled with Rick Ware Racing. Originally, they had said, hey, we're purchasing one of their charters. And then Rick Ware's like, wait, no, that's not supposed to be for a little while now. And then Rick Ware reportedly sold a charter to TJ Puchier, the former co-owner of Spire Motorsports. And then who even knows if that was real or not? That's crazy. But they've settled out of court, and Legacy will not get that charter next year, but in 2027, which also brings another question about where will the charter for the 60 car of Ryan Preece go? All right. So Legacy may end up leasing out a charter and maybe releasing it to Ryan Preece or something. I have no idea, but Legacy says they're not ready at this point in the game to have a third car. They still want one despite the recent results of adding that third team. And to Dan's point, though, you've got more data points and more money coming in. Potentially, maybe it does work out ultimately. Now,
I look at this kind of like the Walmart strategy, where the big get bigger and the little ones get run over. And that's the way I look at this, is if you can pull that organization and you can do three, I would do three, because there is strength in this.
Sure. Especially when you just look at all the things it takes to get one place to the other, the payout from these charters, no doubt. So I think you've taught me back into it there, Dan. All right, now, one big crew chief on the move. We haven't heard a lot of crew chief silly season, really not even a lot of driver silly season. A crew chief on the move is Randall Burnett. Now, before I get there, I want to say something about Daniel Suarez. Daniel Suarez told one of our reporters, photojournalists, actually, at an event recently that I'm actually going to talk about my final thought, a really great gesture that Suarez at Echo Park Speedway did. But Suarez told our photojournalist, Hunter Joyce, at 11 Alive, on the record, that he does know his 2026 plans, but he can't announce them for another month or so. Probably trying to get, as deep in the playoffs as possible and other things to settle down. Suarez was rumored to maybe be a candidate to replace Justin Haley in the 7 car, although who knows if that was leaked out, maybe just to help improve Haley's performance. I don't know. There's also Junior Motorsports, which will have at least one vacancy in the Xfinity Series next year, being Connor Zilisch. So we'll have to see what pans out there. But we do know that Connor Zilisch is moving to Cup and is going to take Suarez's spot on the Trackhouse Racing roster, although we don't know what car number that will be just yet. And Randall Burnett, current crew chief for the struggling Kyle Busch number 18, but a team that Burnett's won with several times with Kyle Busch and Tyler Reddick. Burnett is going to be Connor Zilich's crew chief for his rookie season there. So, Dan, what do you think about the move, both for Zilisch and the loss for RCR, because Randall Burnett is viewed as one of the better minds there on the pit box?
I think it's going to be a plus to Connor to have that expertise, that experience behind him for sure. When you've come through as many seasons and have that much knowledge and experience, it pays off. It is one of those things where we're just going to have to see where the chemistry shakes out at, because to me, that is one of the most important elements, is the chemistry of this. And we've seen it over and over again, is you leave one place that's struggling, you go another place, and what are you bringing to the table? Obviously, they see that he's bringing something to the table. It's going to be a big plus. But but what was the reasons for leaving RCR?
Well, for sure. And the RCR organization struggling, and something that occurred to my mind, Devin, to Dan's point there, is who's he replacing, right? Because they haven't announced Trackhouse that anybody's left, but Trackhouse, and Devin, you were in the press conference at Bristol, and Ross Chastain talked about the changes in leadership there. I believe Jordan Bianchi asked him about it, and Chastain was very diplomatic in his response, which is, hey, I trust whatever Justin Marks decides. And basically we haven't seen all the results yet, but they changed some of the competition leadership at Trackhouse. Now they're bringing in Randall Burnett. Well, Daniel Suarez, as crew chief, is also, I believe, regarded as one of the, an up-and-coming mind in the garage, and he's a literal rocket scientist named Matt Swiderski. He came from Penske. He worked for what's the company that SpaceX? I was trying to think. I almost said, what is the company that Tesla owns? That's literally where I'm at in my day now. The Elon Musk company for rockets, SpaceX. Swiderski worked for SpaceX and came back to NASCAR, and now is on a pit box. So you got to wonder where he's on the move too. But nonetheless, I want to throw that tidbit in, Devin. What do you think about Randall Burnett going to Zilisch? What do you think this means for Kyle Busch and for the 8 team and the talent and depth chart at RCR, which is really struggled, especially with that 8 car?
I think it's going to be really hard to say when it comes with Connor Zilisch and the Randall Burnett duo. I think we're just going to have to wait till next year when that happens, to be honest, because this season and last season with Kyle Busch just has not been really that good.
Been horrible
between
this year.
The two, but at the same time, you have to look at the organization they're with. Kyle Busch, what point is he at in his career? Kyle Busch is definitely in the winding down process in his career, that's for sure.
40 years old.
He was overperforming in equipment a few years ago in RCR, where nowadays you could say maybe he's matching that equipment level because just due to his age, he's out of his prime now. We saw a little bit of the decline at the end of the Joe Gibbs Racing days too. So another thing, Randall Burnett's leaving to go to Trackhouse. What does Kyle Busch do? Does he stay with RCR? Does he go?
Well,
to
he signed a
team, or
contract.
does he even retire? I think that's one thing you have to look at too. Maybe not this year or next year, but I think that's something you really have to really look into, is to see where Kyle Busch is going to go in the future. Does he go to another team, or does he just hang it up?
Can I ask the question, if either one of y'all would draw me a flow chart to show me what the crew chief's exact role is today, how much responsibility he has with each team, what his input is during each race event, and what exactly does that play into? I know that some would have a lot of input and a lot of decision process during the event of what we do, what we don't do. But I think that role has been so. It used to be a crew chief was one person. He called the shots. He did it all, and he was responsible for what happened during the event that day and what that car did and so forth, even with the driver. Now, I'm not so sure what the role of crew chief. Somebody's going to have to redefine this for me, because I'm really at a loss of where we are with crew chief, car chief, engineers, and all the panel of people that make up a given Sunday and what we don't see.
That's a great point. So I would say that crew chief is akin to head coach. If your driver's your quarterback, so think about a head coach on a football team. It depends on the football team whether they're play calling, whether they're drawing up plays, or whether they're just getting the best out of each person, right? It's more like a leadership thing, and then also a set of hands on the car. Car chief. Remember when Jimmy Johnson was winning his championships? That a lot of credit, more credit should have been given to Ron Malik, his car chief, than it was given. Chad Knaus, the undoubted leader of that team. Puts the sharp shoes right to the driver when he needs to. Yells and cusses at people. That's how you rate. Kind of like Belichick on that team, in a way. But Ron Malik, it was a lot of times, especially before AI and all this stuff, his setups. He was the one in charge of the car preparation, especially the racetrack, the way I understood it. So I think it depends on the teams. I think it's evolved over time, to your point, Dan, so I didn't have an exact answer there. One thing I want to tell you I saw at Bristol, though. So Alan Gustafson, all right, who is, could stop right now and be considered one of the greater crew chiefs. He's, won a lot of races. Alan Gustafson at Bristol, I saw him making adjustments on the rear windows of the car, like with a decal, like reapplying a decal, which he told me was for aero, all right, and did it right in front of officials. He wasn't cheating or anything. So to say, not you, but for someone to imply, hey, they don't put their hands on the car, they're just leading the team. No, they do the little things that help the team out where it's needed. I was talking to Booty Barker, who is crew chiefing for Corey Heim at Bristol, and I was asking him some questions about the tires. And then the inspector came up and said, hey, we got an issue with whatever it was. And Booty Barker said, I got to stop. I got to go lead these guys. And he rolled right over there and started telling them what he needed them to do because, again, Booty Barker isn't crawling up under the car, but he's telling them what to do and leading his guys. So I think it's leader and getting the most out of people, very similar to what the owner does. Long answer, but that's a great point, Dan. The crew chief is not sitting there with greasy hands and a wrench and saying, "Oh man, this is an Alan Gustafson setup, baby."
How many people are in his ear telling him what needs to be done or what would be the best advantage during the course of the race? And this is during the course of the race, as it's real time, and these calls that they make, and the worst part about it is you can't do anything until you have a pit stop for the most part.
Sure.
You can guide the driver on different lines on the racetrack and so forth, and what groove to be in and so forth. You're faster up here, you're faster when you run this line, but ultimately the pit stops are where you make adjustments, tire pressure, so forth, and it comes down to somebody is in his ear saying we probably need to do this, and this would be to our advantage, so forth.
Up to him and the spotter to coach the driver, and to put it in the driver's ear and tell the driver in a way, or not tell him in a way. And by the way, crew chiefs, what are they doing too, guys? They're coaching the spotters. Hey man, tell him he needs to, have a little more wheel into turn 3 or whatever. Like they are in charge of digesting this communication and putting it into the bites that the performers need to have. Are they the actual pit crew coach for the people over the wall? No, they got a guy for that. The bigger teams do, right? Are they twisting the bolts of the car? No. But I think setup strategy, they are involved, and certainly communicating with that strategy is too. And by the way, a look into this, it's not NASCAR directly, but watch the Garage 56 documentary on Prime Video and see the role that Chad Knaus and Greg Ives had. And I forget her name, but the woman that was in charge of that whole program for Hendrick as well. They all gave input, and none of those three I saw was really there wrenching on the car. They were all telling the people to wrench the car. So for what it's worth, that's a great. I'm so glad you brought that up, Dan.
This was also light years ago in technology and where we are today versus.
Well, sure, 2 years ago, yeah. But it's the same kind of idea. They're talking on these inter-team radios, instant messaging, one-line messaging, Microsoft Teams or whatever they're using, and that's how a lot of that messaging and whatnot, communication happens. A great, fascinating discussion there. As we approach the hour mark, just a truncated preview of Kansas here. I'd really like to keep this one below if we can. Excuse me. It's going to be Xfinity and Cup Series. There's the two main series racing in Kansas. You can go to NASCAR.com or JSKI or whichever to figure out when and where everything is. Sunday's race, I believe, is also going to be on USA Network again. So we'll be looking for a nice 1.3 to 1.5 million people watching that. It's just a shame. It's a shame not marketing this stuff the right way, putting it in the right spots.
The air race isn't until Talladega, which is just less than a month away.
There you go, Talladega for sure. So here in Kansas, though, looking at past races, Kyle Larson, the winner in the spring. Last fall, Ross Chastain. The heater that 2311 was on was really in 2022 and 2023. We mentioned that, and they are now putting more pressure on themselves, I'm sure, being with Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick so far below the cut line. And I'm sure Riley Herbst will be running some kind of wackadoo setup there to try to help them out. Don't you think? I mean, come on. So that you got to think that they're going to be trying anything they can on the 35 to help the 23 and the 45 there for 2311. Anything, expectations, Devin? Kansas, 1.5 mile race, seems the first one in ages like we talked about.
You mentioned it there just to see what 2311 is going to do, but I'm also curious to see what Hendrick Motorsports brings to Kansas on Sunday as well.
Yeah, I'm big into that too, because if a Hendrick driver comes out and wins and stamps it to the round of 8 and doesn't have to worry about the Roval, I think we could really see some stuff. So looking at, so Friday's schedule, what race do we have? Oh, Arca Menards Series, which should be on FS1, I believe. 100-lap race. That's going to be Friday night, 7 o'clock. And then let me jump ahead to Saturday. Weekend schedule. 1 second, I'm sorry. Practice and qualifying for Xfinity, 9:30 in the morning on the CW app. Pour your coffee, boys. 9:30 and I believe that's local time, so 10:30 here in Atlanta and here in Georgia. 12 noon or 1 Eastern will be Cup Series practice and qualifying. And then, of course, Sunday's race, the Xfinity race will be at 3 p.m., so that will not be a night race. That's good. Cup Series race Sunday at 2 p.m. And again, that's on USA and the Motor Racing Network, Sirius XM 90, all that will have the coverage. So we'll be tuned in, dialed into that. We already told you the playoff standings are. If I were a good host, I'd pull up the what drivers recent times have done at Kansas there, but we'll leave that for another time. So anything else we're looking for in Kansas, Dan?
No, just a good race and a competitive race, and may the best man and car win.
Could see something crazy there. Could see a rather pedestrian race, but you got to run all the laps to find out.
I still say that the drivers are going to try to gun for the wins, and that to me is the key to this: is try to win your races from here on and win your way into next rounds of playoffs.
Win your way into the next round of the play. Yeah, I think so. You don't want to have to go, especially if you're lowering the points, and go to the Roval there. Dev, you got something?
I just saw some kids ding-dong ditch my neighbor's house.
Oh, wow. That's big.
Yeah.
We'll go join them.
No, these are not the people to ding-dong ditch.
Okay. All right. Clicked up, buddy. Clicked up at Forsyth County. Hey, the last 7 races, Gen 7 car era, last 7 races of Kansas. So this will be the 8th Gen 7 car era race. So I almost became a good host here. Kyle Larson has 2 wins, most points by 13 over Denny Hamlin. Hamlin, who won a race in 2023 there. Ryan Blaney, he's on a heater, and he's been at Kansas too. Average finish of 9.7 in the Gen 7 car area. Christopher Bell never won there. 9.6 average finish, 4th most points. Chase Elliott, 5th most points. All these guys, playoffs. 6th in points. Ross Chastain won last fall. Then Alex Bowman, William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., Joey Logano. You notice Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick not on that list. And Reddick has won at Kansas before. I forgot about that. but has also had his struggles there, too. Average finish of 19.6 in the Gen 7 car era. He won a 2023 race there at Kansas. So that's looking ahead to Kansas. Final thoughts on 5 to go. Dan Elliott, I know you're on grandbaby or grand toddler duty. So anything you got going on there in Dawsonville or anything you want to leave us with?
No, I'm just thinking about what's coming up. We're at this time of year where we are we're getting ready to get into festival mode. And we've got Gold Rush, Moonshine Festival, Sorghum Festival, Apple Festival, and Leaf Looking Season. And for you few people who haven't come to North Georgia and either moved here or visited here, please come by and blow as you go by or wave and let me know that you've come and visited our fair city or have moved here, because if I think it's going to be like I feel like it's going to be, nobody's going to go anywhere.
Okay. That's, a lot of people show up in Dawsonville and then traffic doesn't move.
Traffic is going to be like a cheap toilet. It's going to get backed up.
Oh, my God, that's funny. You are so funny. Dan, you're a nut. I really appreciate you, man. All right, Devin, what about you, brother, as you get a weekend off from travel?
Yeah, how about a sellout crowd at New Hampshire this weekend? How often do we see that in the playoff stretch normally, because we get to compete with the NFL? We see it with Phoenix Raceway for the championship races, but really my final thought is that I have a prediction, man, and I posted this on X earlier in the day, Devin_Kupka on
Come
X. My prediction is with the spinoff of NBC Universal's cable division, that includes USA Network, MSNBC, Bravo, I predict that you're going to see a majority, if not probably all of the NBC races that USA and USA and NBC split. I wouldn't be surprised to see them all become over-the-air races in the future, because if you think about it, we see USA is going to be completely separate of NBC. And does NBC want to give away its NASCAR property to technically a competitor now? Not much of a competitor anymore with the way cable is going. But I think that's something to watch out for. They're mulling a potential launch of another sports cable channel, which feels like we're taking 3 steps backwards. But we'll see. I think NBC will ditch USA in the next 2 years.
Okay. Prediction, NBC will ditch USA in the next. Respond right here. Respond right here. Yeah, or will it be on, just put it on NASCAR's Fast channel? I don't know. No, they paid too many rights for that to do that. So predictions for Devin Kupka. Hey, I want to give a big shout out to Daniel Suarez. And I mentioned his news earlier, that he has some news but can't share it now about 2026. But here this season, when he's had just a miserable stretch at Cup, he still is going out of his way. And I'm not sure exactly who set it up. I know that Echo Park Speedway officials, like the track vice president, GM Brandon Hutchison, were up in Canton to help assist. It's something that I got asked to help with, by the way. I totally forgot. So shame on me. All right. I got asked to help with this and put some people in contact, and shame on me. All right, I forgot. But Daniel Suarez to the rescue. A 103-year-old Navy veteran, Captain Charles Levine, wanted to meet a NASCAR driver. And Suarez showed up in Canton midweek in between a Kansas race and a New Hampshire race, and living in the Charlotte area. And Suarez came to visit this Navy veteran. The veteran, Captain Levine, or Claude Captain Levine, as he's called, was a former dirt racer back in the 50s and desperately wanted to meet a driver. He watches every Sunday. He had people helping translate for him because his speech was just so diminished. But Suarez came and hung out with him for a little while. 11alive.com. I'm going to post the article on there. Our photojournalist Hunter Joyce was there and chronicled that. But props to Echo Park Speedway officials, Daniel Suarez, Trackhouse racing officials, anybody that helped put that together. And thank you, Captain Levine, for your service. A couple of other nods and just to pay respects here. We didn't mention this, and it happened actually before Bristol, but Bill Davis, 2002 Daytona 500 winning car owner in the Cup Series, longtime owner for Ward Burton. At one point in the Xfinity Series, owned Mark Martin's cars, owned for Randy LaJoie, Scott Wimmer, Dave Blaney, Jeremy Mayfield, several others, and Bobby Labonte. Bill Davis passed away after an illness. And then also, too, this news coming out this past week, but Steve Bird, back-to-back Xfinity Series crew chief for Johnny Benson and Randy LaJoie in 1995 and 1996, he also passed away, too. So condolences to their families and everybody that loved and appreciated them and respected them. Dan, I know you didn't get to spend much time around Steve Bird. Did you have any interactions with either he or Bill Davis, though? Did you get to know any of them before we go?
Yeah, Bill Davis, really, really nice man, and definitely one of the people that you remember extremely well. Always was good to me because during his era of Busch and so forth, got the opportunity to change tires for some of his cars during the double events where you'd run a Busch and a Cup race together, and gave me an opportunity to get more practice for the Sunday race. And Bill, really, really nice man. Can't say enough for him. And truly, truly, prayers go out to the family.
No doubt. Yeah, Gail Davis, his surviving widow there. And again, we don't have a ton of other information about Steve Bird, but just want to mention him too. He won, I believe it was 18 races in the Xfinity Series too. But even if he won none and nobody knew his name, still an important figure of the sport, because these are the people that stitch it together. If they don't put their necks on the line like you did, Dan, jumping over the wall, or like these owners do, jumping over and, putting their money and their fortune, their life savings out to go racing, we don't have a sport, all right? And that's something to remember here as we think about these NASCAR races, these NASCAR losses.
They love the sport. They just love the sport. And that's what was so great about the owners, was that they love the sport of racing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no doubt. Well, rest in peace to both of them, too. I should throw into a Bill Davis. He owned the Xfinity car that Jeff Gordon was driving when he was a Ford driver that Rick Hendrick discovered him from at Atlanta Motor Speedway, back when it was called that then, or Atlanta International Raceway. When they saw Jeff Gordon wheeling around that track, and Rick Hendrick said, "Whoa, who's that?" And they figured out a way to get him out, and it burned a relationship up between Jeff Gordon and Bill Davis, but nonetheless, it set the trajectory of the sport completely differently there. And again, if Gordon doesn't have anything to race in NASCAR, it's thanks to Bill Davis at first, right? So anyway, condolences there. Davis also the car-winning owner, the winning car owner of the 2001 Southern 500 with Ward Burton, another crown jewel race. All right, so we covered it all today. Of course, condolences to Bill Davis and Steve Bird. We talked a lot about New Hampshire playoff implications, because that's, we got to say playoff 6,000 times a show in this time of year. Ty Gibbs versus Denny Hamlin, how both were in the wrong. Is it or is it not beneficial to add a third team in the Cup Series? We talked about implications of Randall Burnett leaving RCR, going to Trackhouse with Zilisch, and we previewed Kansas. So that's your package here on 5 to Go, episode 332. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back to recap what we see from Kansas Speedway and anything else that unfolds, because you never know this time of year. You're going to have a big truth bomb drop right in the middle of that. Get some rest, everybody. God bless you. I hope it feels like fall where you're at. Enjoy it here. This has been the 5 to Go podcast.
I think that is it